Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech, protected.
Welcome to the feed. Here we are, talking amongst ourselves and having a good time.
I had no idea this was going to be filmed.
Yes, we actually are.
This is a TV show. It's not just us.
It is. It is us. All right, we're good. Marty.
Yes.
Well, Dave. Wait a minute. First of all, we got to start from the beginning. February 5th, here we are, and we have David Stern as our guest. Today we're going to talk about Cabaret, and sounds like a bunch of stuff.
A host of things.
So
excited to be
David
here.
is bursting with knowledge.
David is fired up.
I hear that he may have the results of the Iowa caucus hidden somewhere, but that's just rumor. Anyway, Marty.
That's pretty much the way the show's going to go today,
The show's
folks.
gonna go.
Just saying. There was a
All
State
right.
of the Union address last night.
The voice of reason, Marty.
That might be brought in, I'm not sure.
Okay.
So upcoming events, we have this Saturday night, an evening with Bill McGibbon. That's hosted by the Grafton Nature Museum. It's at the Grafton Community Church, which I believe is also known as the White Church in Grafton. And it's at 7 p.m. and tickets are on a sliding scale from $15 to $25.
Wow.
And then
Bill McKibben is the creator of 350.org.
Uh-huh.
He's a huge climate activist. Maybe everybody knows who he is.
No,
but
we don't.
just thought I'd throw it out there. He's pretty much nationally renowned speaker on climate change and climate crisis. And how
what
to move
climate
forward.
crisis?
Yes.
Moving on.
Moving on, we just had Groundhog Day, and spring is coming early. How about that?
Yep, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Who'd have thought it?
With the
It's warmer, isn't
Speaking
it?
of, yeah, speaking
it's a
of
lot
climate
warmer than
change.
it's ever been.
Speaking of climate change.
Yeah.
That's
That
really
was a
all I
nice
have.
segue.
That's actually
That's
all
all
I
you
have
have?
for events.
Hi, David.
And then Cabaret.
Oh, what?
Cabaret.
Cabaret, so
Cabaret.
that's why I'm here.
This is the segue.
All right, so
Cabaret.
should we dive in?
Dive.
Welcome,
Take the lead.
friends.
Welcome.
So Main Street Arts this year for our winter musical at the Opera House here in Bellows Falls is doing a production of Cabaret.
A nice, light
a
musical.
romp. A romp.
Through
So the truth of the matter, I just want to put it out there. It's a very interesting show in that, well, it was really a groundbreaking show when it opened in 1966. There had never been anything
really?
like it. It has no overture. It has a drum roll that opens
Yeah,
the
that's
show.
true.
It was done with an open set concept, which now meaning you walked in and the set was right there in front of you instead of a curtain. All of that was in 1966. People were like,
revolutionary.
"What?"
Yeah.
Now
Drop
we're
the
like,
mic.
what? But it is full of playfulness and humor and kind of sexy playfulness and humor. It takes place in a nightclub in Berlin in the 1920s and 30s, sort of Weimar Republic era, which was pretty much the most decadent place on the planet in
At the time.
1920s and 30s.
Yes.
So it's a look. It was created out of I Am a Camera, which was created off of another piece of writing, but somebody who had gone to Berlin in the 20s and spent time there, and it was pseudo-autobiographical,
Oh, I didn't
and
realize that
had
part.
but the idea was there we are romping away in the development of fascism and Nazi Germany in specific. And so, yes, there is a bit of a dark underbelly to the piece, and I think the point is that you romp your way and laugh through the rise of Hitler, and then get caught at the end a little bit with your metaphoric pants down because you sort of have been laughing all the way along.
Because they weren't paying attention.
And part of it is a look at how the decadence and depravity help us not pay attention.
Right.
But I've been wrestling with that because we certainly have plenty of decadence and depravity. We have a crazy online porn culture. We have all kinds of video games that people can play 24/7. There's lots of ways currently, and drugs actually were pretty big in the 1920s in Berlin. I had no idea that this sort of cocaine culture had been so prevalent and things like that, but my research tells me, so there it is. But we too live in a pretty wild culture. Some would say more than ever before.
It is the 20s again, too. It's an interesting...
An interesting symmetry.
Yes,
Yeah.
we're into the
1920s.
20s.
Just out of
The
curiosity,
1920s versus
did
the
you
2020s.
choose it because of that?
So I chose it because of its parallel historically, not because of the number matchup, but because to me this feels like a time where, if not fascism in toto, the conditions for fascism seem to be on the rise internationally and, in my opinion, right here in America.
I agree.
So that's the thing that's driving me. And I guess what I most really want to talk about, the things that are on my mind right now, are what to do. Really, Cabaret presents in this musical, humorous fashion a look at different people's choices as the Third Reich is rising about how to behave. And we look at people who just put their head in the sand and try and ignore it, and we look at people who just try and hunker down and stay out of the way so they don't get in trouble, and we look at people who leave the country, and we look at people who become Nazis.
Right.
And the only thing that we don't see really is any active resistance in the show. There's really nobody who takes on the role of, I'm going to fight.
Yeah.
They
true.
take on the role, Cliff, who's an American, who just happens to be visiting, is like, I'm out. Everybody else stays. And everybody else, and the one Jewish character says, but I'm a German.
Yeah.
And they're going to know that I'm a German. And that doesn't really work out as it turns out. So here we are, and I'll just throw some things out. Here we are in the 2020s, and if you look at some of the hallmarks of the development of fascism, you see things like the denigration and loss of a free press, the closing of borders, elections that become, and it's ironic after the Iowa caucuses, but elections that become increasingly in doubt in terms of their authenticity and accuracy. The rise of nationalism, and if we see anything, if Make America Great Again means anything, it means Make America Great Again. We are going to be a great country. And in and of itself, that sounds great. It's not, who doesn't want this country to be great? But one of the things that gets me is when people say God bless America, they could say God bless all people everywhere. But we don't say that, and really nationalism isn't typically, as it wasn't in Italy and it wasn't in Germany, it isn't inclusive. It picks a group of people for whom America should be made great again, and then a group of people for whom it should not. At least, in Germany, if you look at Germany, that's obviously true.
Right.
So we can say that. So are there people that are being disenfranchised, that are becoming an outcast group? Is this really white nationalism writ large, or is this really nationalism? So when you see mass deportations, or the expansion of hate crimes, and the Southern Poverty Law Center says we are at the moment in their recorded history where hate groups are the most active, and there are more hate groups operating than ever before. And the crimes, if you start looking, and it's, things like the Pulse nightclub, or or just recently in Brooklyn, or the Tree of Life Synagogue, or most recently in Brooklyn, the attacks on Jews that was really weird while making this show to look at Jews practicing their religion underground in hidden locations so that they would escape violence. And so we also, fascism really thrives on loyalty over integrity. So again, I look at our current
ironic day
governance
today,
and I say, you know, we're going to be with the Fuhrer. We're not questioning his choices or whatever. You know, how did Nazi Germany go as far as it went,
Yeah.
and how did Mussolini go as far as he went? And I find myself as a Jew, as a person who was raised by German parents who both fled the Nazis, where the message for me was, it could happen here, you need to remember, be watchful. And I always was like, yeah. And suddenly, in the last few years, I feel like, okay, my antennae are up. And I just look, what concerns me as I do this broadcast,
Right.
is we're so divided. And I just don't know that I don't know how to talk about this as a real concern in a way that allows other people to hear me who are on the other side of the fence.
And that's the difficulty.
If you are supporting our current president and you do believe in a lot of right action, that he's making a lot of right choices, that, you know, there are things that I agree. I'm not sure that I'm against tariffs against China. That's not something that I don't blanketly disagree with everything this president has done or suggested. And I try to listen, but I hope that there's a way for us to hear each other and to calm down and to talk together. My whole thing as an artist in doing cabaret is theater is a mode of speech. It's a way to communicate. It's a way to bring issues to the fore. And I'm worried about this show because I'm not backing off from what we're talking about.
Right.
And I hope I do it respectfully, but I feel like I have to do it. And lately it feels like when people speak, even respectfully, it seems to continue a divide.
Right.
That's my conundrum.
Well, and I agree totally with what you said. One of the things that it's sort of like when you were saying, when we were talking earlier about there's no signs of resistance in the play itself. At least what the impression I got from it was an immovable, or it was an irresistible force that took them over. At least that's the people that we see in the play. That's how they see it. It was like, oh, there's nothing I can do about this. I can either leave or I can
Or bury
knuckle
my
on-
head in the sand,
yeah,
or hide.
turn off my TV and not watch the State of the Union address because I can't stand it.
Yeah, and
The thing that,
we're not at this place right now where certainly active physical resistance is an
Well,
issue
it's
or
funny
a
'cause
point.
one of the things as I watch this dynamic in the United States today is I see people that I would refer to the left and myself saying, oh, we need, and you saying, oh, we need to come together and reason this out. And I see people on the other side saying, if this happens, we're going to pull our guns out and shoot everybody. It's pretty much where it is. I mean, there's people that went in Washington last week and carried guns around and just like, okay, yeah, you can. They think there's an unreasonable, even though they are the government, they think there's an unreasonable government that they need to resist.
Well, and I would say that white nationalists have been told to perceive a threat to this nation. And I think that's very dangerous rhetoric. I mean, I think the rhetoric that has inspired a fervent fan base has been dangerous rhetoric that has united a lot of people under a banner,
A false banner.
and maybe a banner of some hate.
Yes. But
And fear. I will say this. I do believe that the white working class in America has lost a lot of jobs. And that not only have they lost jobs, but I think they've lost the respect that used to be given to a person who worked a blue-collar job for 40, 50 hours a week and fed their family. And now there seems to be an outlook that of Homer Simpson, of a way of presenting the white working class that is not honorable. And part of my concern is that we've taken away from people their livelihoods and their pride. And that is a place where
That's a
anger
dangerous place, yeah.
seems to rise for me. And I feel for that. I would love nothing more than to restore the status of what it means to hold a job and feed your family. And
Do you see things like cabaret, like art, plays, historically based plays, as a way to at least stop and make people think?
I hope so. That's the point. So,
You
yes.
just kind of see the parallels, like come to their own conclusions. Like you're presenting the play has some definite undertones. You can take it either as a light, cabaret.
It's hard
or
to
you
take
can-
in total. At the
Yeah,
end, it's hard
yeah,
to walk
I
out and
know.
go, that was light.
But,
But-
you could bury your head in the sand and be that way, or you could start to think. And isn't that where everything should start? Is it with
Yeah.
people just
Yeah,
coming to their own
but you
conclusions?
could get angry.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm going to write an article that basically is saying what I'm saying here.
Yeah.
And I think if people equate the show with a left
Oh, then they won't
wing push on, then maybe they dismiss it. I believe that history has lessons for us, that there are parallels, that it's worth looking at. And my hope is we're going to do talkbacks. And my hope is that people will stay, and the people that want to stay will stay, and that we can have dialogue, and that people that are upset won't go home and lash out about how upset they are. They'll stay and say, I'm upset because this, and I feel this. And then the great hope is that we have a chance to go, I hear that.
That's what I'm saying. It kind of
And
gets people talking.
That's the hope, that somehow we find a way to get people talking together, and building back a kind of communication that, it feels to me like we're on this brink.
Yeah.
And if we don't pull back and find a way, that's my thing. The way out of Nazi Germany, it seemed to me, the more I thought about it, was communication, was people going, hey, I'm not so sure. I'm not sure the Jews are all the problem. Blah, 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 blah. And if enough voices were raised and enough communication happened, that seems to me the point of stopping it. Not when there's death camps that are built and ovens that are rolling and trains that are dragging people in, and that seems late.
But you brought up a really one of the things that fostered Nazi Germany was actually the end of World War One. Was that the Germans were humiliated. They had lost all their pride, and they had been, even though, if you look back now, technically they were no more responsible for World War One than any of the other countries there. They were blamed.
They were punished.
They were
in
punished.
the settlement.
And the people that saw that were the working class, just the people you were talking about.
They saw the greatest suffering out of that.
They did. They were,
And then
the depression.
the depression came.
took over. So here we had this group of people, and basically Hitler came to power on the conspiracy that the Jews and the people at the home front actually betrayed the soldiers and surrendered when they could have won. And
it's
because
not
of that,
that
they were
ironic. It seems, again, we didn't have the Great Depression like they had that
But
depression.
we have
But
just
we
what you were talking about before is we've taken away the pride in that group of people that sort of.
And we did have a big recession.
Yes, we did.
It
Yeah.
wasn't like a joke.
No.
It was real.
It was real, and people lost their jobs, and they're not coming back.
And my fear is if we had one major terrorist attack, like a nuclear weapon or a major bombing or a nuclear material dropped in a reservoir, or any of the, the crazy thing. One, it feels like we're about that far away from galvanizing a very militarized. I mean, the left, there's an interesting thing that's happening among, if you looked at that march, the one that you were just talking about the right to bear arms march, how militarized groups of civilians, there are groups of civilians
they're just
they are decked out in flak suits and long rifles and helmets, and a scary thing. I had a thought. I was like, do we all arm? Is that? I mean, are we? Is that? Or if one whole group of the nation is arming, it's a very interesting challenge to look at. To go, okay, there's a whole subculture in the United States that is getting ready for something, and I'm not one of them. So I hope I'm ready when the time comes to be ready for something. May we not find ourselves there. May we find a way to talk to each other and share concerns and build an America that is really great, not in a status way, but in a human, connective, communicative way. Like, I don't need to be I guess everybody wants to be the most powerful. We don't want to,
I
but
don't know that everyone wants to be the most powerful. That's I don't
well, but I
think
mean,
that, but they don't. They want
nationally,
not other people to be as powerful as they are. Maybe.
which sounds almost the same.
That's how you word it.
Yeah, it's how you word it, and that's definitely
So we're low.
On
not super
time. We
low,
need to go
we're
back to
low.
Cabaret
So
a
we need
little
to go
bit.
back to Cabaret a little bit.
Okay, Cabaret a little bit. Really, I mean, the songs you might remember if you Welcome and Bienvenue. I mean, or the Money Song, or Diddly-dee-dee-dee, two ladies. Diddly. I mean, that's the kind of fun. You have an MC playing around with two ladies, and it's bawdy and it's full of banter and it's a lot of fun. All while creeping in amongst it, and I think that's the genius of its construction.
Right. Well, Money's a funny song, but it's about greed, and
Right,
and
it's very, the play is very comical. The way it's I mean, not the play itself, but the word play and the banter of that number, and it has a sense of irony that I think is beautiful for the moment. And for this style of theater, it came out of Brechtian, 1930s German theater. So I think it's one of the great pieces in the American canon, and I hope people will come join us. It's.
But you and I have talked about two ladies too. It's like, here's two ladies and one man, but a whole generation of Germans had been killed. So there were actually lots of women that didn't have men. And so it was in the set. It wasn't like a kinky sex thing. It was really a.
Although
there was a kinky sex thing involved.
Back in 20s and 30s in Berlin, another thing I learned is just how open and sort of accepting of LGBTQ, what people would call, quote unquote, deviating sexual behavior, multiple partners. It seemed like a kind of, it's all good, everything goes.
Amazing thing.
Sort of time in history. And then that was followed by the rise of Nazism, which was really quite repressive. Gays and gypsies and were also among the people to be shipped to the camps, and which is another interesting thing. We just had a debate yesterday at a costuming session. The MC, and typically the MCs in these clubs were of different,
they sort of have
whether they were all gay or queer or however many were, and they were also typically at the end they ended up in camps or tortured or put to death or whatever.
Well, the whole other thing is something you could have gotten to was deviant art. I mean, that was a whole other Nazi era thing. Kandinsky and all the people that we look at now as fantastic artists and abstract artists were all labeled as deviants.
Gros and all of the
Yeah.
expressionists. And they also were coming out of Freud, so everybody was like, and there's sex in everything. Oh my God.
And we have to purify this.
And
we
then
can't
they-
have deviant
right.
art.
So it's an interesting topic. I hope people stay and come and chat with us and come and see the piece. I think it's a really exciting piece of theater.
This has been a great show, David. Thank you. We don't normally get so deeply into interesting.
The political falderall.
Well, I don't know if it's even political. I think it's social. There's
I'm
a-
really, truly nervous.
Yeah,
I have never been. I literally have
join you in
never
your
been.
nervousness.
I watch the State of the Union, enough of it, and I was like, this is a masterwork at manipulative theater. This is not buffoonery. This is an organization moving methodically toward the possibility of
Not leaving it
ownership
for
of
you.
the political system.
Yes.
And in a time where the world needs desperately, I think, something else that addresses climate change, that looks at, that isn't about, I am sort of terrified for my
All right.
We're
children.
gonna have to end on that note.
Oh, I thought we weren't. Are we still filming?
We're still filming.
We're
Yeah,
still
they're gonna cut
filming.
us off in a minute.
All right. But
Alex
that's
is
it
gonna
for this
go to
week.
I didn't.
Hey,
I thought
did
we
you
were
know
done.
you were on TV for the last 25 minutes?
I
All
knew
right.
that.
All right,
That's
bye,
it. See you
community.
next week.